Clarke's dosing rule. Imagine the scene, London, 1930. A small child is burning with fever, their breathing shallow. The parents are frantic, looking to a doctor for a miracle. In the doctor's hands is a powerful new sulfa drug, a marvel of modern science. But a single, terrifying question hangs in the air, a question that could mean the difference between life and death. What is the correct dose? Give too much, and this life-saving medicine becomes a lethal poison, overwhelming the child's tiny organs. Give too little, and the infection rages on, unchecked, rendering the treatment completely useless. This wasn't a rare dilemma. It was the daily, terrifying reality of pediatric medicine. Before the mid-20th century, treating children was a dangerous and often tragic game of guesswork. Doctors, even the most experienced, were essentially flying blind. They relied on crude, unreliable methods. A common approach was to simply take the adult dose and divide it by a rough estimate, perhaps giving a 10-year-old half the adult dose and a 5-year-old a quarter. This was akin to trying to build a precision watch with a sledgehammer. It failed to account for the vast physiological differences between a child and a scaled-down adult. A child's metabolism, their organ development, the way their body processes and eliminates substances, it's all fundamentally different. This chaotic approach led to countless preventable tragedies. Underdosing meant diseases that should have been treatable became fatal. Overdosing led to catastrophic side effects, organ damage, and death. The medical field was desperate for a standard, a reliable system that could bring order to this chaos and replace dangerous intuition with scientific precision. They needed a hero. And that hero emerged, not from the hollowed centuries-old halls of the medical establishment, but from the brilliant mind of a man whose name you have almost certainly never heard. His name was Dr. Cecil Belfield Clarke. He was a physician from Barbados, practicing in London, and he saw this life-threatening problem with stunning clarity. He understood that a child's body was not just a miniature version of an adult's. He recognized that a truly safe and effective system for pediatric dosing had to be based on objective, measurable factors. So he developed a formula, a simple, elegant, yet profoundly revolutionary rule. Clarke's rule was a stroke of genius in its simplicity. It was a mathematical formula designed to calculate the correct drug dosage for a child based on their age and, crucially, their weight. It was no longer a guess, it was a calculation. It took the two most critical variables, the child's development stage, represented by age, and their physical size, represented by weight, and turned them into a reliable predictor of how their body would handle a specific medication. A doctor using a slide rule over a medical chart could now, in a matter of moments, arrive at a dose that was tailored specifically to that individual child. The impact was immediate and monumental. It was like giving a map and compass to someone who had been navigating a treacherous sea by starlight alone. Medical errors plummeted. The effectiveness of treatment soared. Children who would have otherwise been lost to dosage errors were now being saved. His formula became a cornerstone of pediatric care, a fundamental principle taught in medical schools and applied in hospitals across the globe. Think about that for a moment. Every single day, for decades, in countless hospitals and clinics, a variation of this foundational logic has been used. When a nurse calculates the right amount of antibiotic for a toddler with an ear infection, or a doctor determines the precise dose of pain relief for a child after surgery, they are standing on the shoulders of Dr. Clarke. A modern digital medical monitor showing a precise dosage calculation. His work is an invisible, life-saving thread woven into the very fabric of modern medicine. Millions upon millions of lives have been saved. Countless families spared the ultimate heartbreak because of the clarity and precision he brought to the field. He should be a household name, celebrated alongside giants like Fleming and Lister. His portrait should hang in the halls of medical universities. His name should be synonymous with pediatric safety. Yet it isn't. Despite this monumental, world-changing contribution, Dr. Cecil Belfield Clarke remains a ghost in the annals of medical history. His groundbreaking work is used daily, but his name is almost completely unknown. He is the forgotten genius whose brilliance protects our children, even as we remain ignorant of his very existence. And the story of why he was forgotten is just as important as the story of what he achieved.
Black gay doctor. So how does a medical pioneer of this magnitude simply vanish from history? How does the architect of a rule that saves millions of children become a footnote, if that? The answer isn't found in dusty medical textbooks or scientific journals. It's found in the harsh, unforgiving social realities of early 20th century Britain. To understand why Dr. Clarke was erased, we have to understand the man himself and the world he was forced to navigate. Cecil Belfield Clarke was not just a doctor. He was a black man from Barbados in the heart of the British Empire. And he was a gay man in an era when his very identity was considered a criminal offense. He lived at the intersection of two deeply marginalized identities, carrying a double burden of prejudice that would have crushed a lesser person. Let's first consider the racial landscape. Clarke arrived in Britain from the colony of Barbados, a brilliant student who earned a place at Cambridge University, an extraordinary feat that speaks volumes about his intellect and determination. But the Britain he entered was the hub of a global empire, an empire built on a foundation of racial hierarchy. The prevailing attitude was one of colonial paternalism at best and outright scientific racism at worst. A black man, no matter how brilliant, was seen by many as an anomaly, an exception to the rule, or worse, an inferior. In the fiercely competitive and traditionalist world of British medicine, he would have faced a constant grinding wall of skepticism and condescension. Every achievement would be scrutinized, every success tinged with surprise from his white peers. He had to be not just good, but twice as good, just to be considered half as worthy. Clarke, standing slightly apart from a group of white medical students, a silent testament to the invisible barriers he faced. He managed to build a thriving and successful medical practice in South London, serving a diverse community, which was a monumental achievement in itself. But in the grand narrative of medical history, a narrative written and controlled by the white establishment, his contributions were always going to be at risk of being minimized or overlooked. Now add to this the second, even more hidden layer of his identity. Dr. Clarke was a gay man. In the Britain of the 1920s and 30s, this was not just a social taboo, it was a crime. The shadow of the Oscar Wilde trial still loomed large. Men could and were imprisoned, their lives and careers utterly destroyed for private acts of love. This forced Clarke into a life of extreme discretion and secrecy. He had a long-term partner, a man named Pat, and together they built a life. But it was a life that had to be lived behind closed doors, a truth that could never be spoken aloud in polite or professional society. Two men's hands subtly touching under a table in a 1930s speakeasy setting. This constant threat of exposure, disgrace, and imprisonment would have been an immense psychological burden. It meant he could never be his whole self. He had to compartmentalize his existence, presenting a carefully curated version to the world. This enforced invisibility had profound consequences for his legacy. A person who cannot be fully known in life is far easier to forget in death. He couldn't have a publicly acknowledged family to champion his legacy. He couldn't be a public figure in the same way as his straight colleagues. His personal life, a source of strength and love for him, was also a source of vulnerability that demanded he keep a low profile. Two men's hands subtly touching under a table in a 1930s speakeasy setting. This constant threat of exposure, disgrace, and imprisonment would have been an immense psychological burden. It meant he could never be his whole self. He had to compartmentalize his existence, presenting a carefully curated version to the world. This enforced invisibility had profound consequences for his legacy. A person who cannot be fully known in life is far easier to forget in death. He couldn't have a publicly acknowledged family to champion his legacy. He couldn't be a public figure in the same way as his straight colleagues. His personal life, a source of strength and love for him, was also a source of vulnerability that demanded he keep a low profile. Two men's hands subtly touching under a table in a 1930s speakeasy setting. This constant threat of exposure, disgrace, and imprisonment would have been an immense psychological burden. It meant he could never be his whole self. He had to compartmentalize his existence, presenting a carefully curated version to the world. This enforced invisibility had profound consequences for his legacy. A person who cannot be fully known in life is far easier to forget in death. He couldn't have a publicly acknowledged family to champion his legacy. He couldn't be a public figure in the same way as his straight colleagues. His personal life, a source of strength and love for him, was also a source of vulnerability that demanded he keep a low profile. This intersection of being both black and gay created a unique and profound challenge. He was an outsider on multiple fronts. The systemic racism of the era made it easy for the establishment to undervalue his intellectual contributions, while the rampant homophobia forced him into the shadows. It was a perfect storm for historical erasure. His genius was undeniable. He was a fellow of the Royal College of Physicians, a respected practitioner, and an innovator. But his identity made him inconvenient to the tidy, heroic narratives of medical progress. He didn't fit the mold of the great man that history loves to celebrate. Yet it is precisely this struggle that makes his achievement all the more staggering. To not only survive but to thrive and innovate under the weight of such immense societal pressure is a testament to an almost unimaginable level of resilience, brilliance, and fortitude. He didn't just overcome obstacles, he made a world-changing discovery while navigating a minefield of prejudice. His story is not one of victimhood. It is a story of incredible triumph against overwhelming odds. And the fact that we almost lost his story completely reveals the deep biases that decide who we remember and who we allow to be forgotten.
Block 3. Legacy and Rediscovery. So we have a brilliant innovator, a man who triumphed over immense social barriers. How then did the practical process of his erasure unfold? A legacy like Dr. Clarke's isn't destroyed in a single dramatic act. It dies a slow death by 1,000 cuts of negligence, bias, and simple, careless error. One of the most insidious and damaging factors was the misspelling of his name. In the medical records and texts where his work was referenced, his name, Clarke with an E, was frequently misspelled as Clarke. It seems like a minor detail, a simple typo. But in the pre-digital age of card catalogs and physical archives, such an error was catastrophic. A librarian's hand flipping through old dusty index cards showing how two distinct paths are created. This simple mistake broke the chain of attribution. A researcher looking for the origins of the pediatric rule under the name Clarke would hit a dead end. The real Dr. Clarke, with his full record of achievements, would remain invisible. This misspelling is a perfect, tragic metaphor for the lack of care and respect afforded to his legacy. His identity was treated carelessly as the spelling of his name. Beyond typos, there was the pervasive issue of attribution. In the hierarchical world of medicine, knowledge and techniques are often passed down from senior doctors to their students. It's entirely possible, even likely, that Clarke's elegant rule was taught in hospitals and universities without his name attached at all.
It may have become known simply as the Pediatric rule or the formula for child dosing. Over time, it would have been absorbed into the canon of common medical knowledge, its specific origins completely detached from its creator. In some cases, it may have been implicitly or explicitly credited to a more senior and invariably white colleague who helped popularize it. This wasn't always malicious. It was often a byproduct of a system that naturally funneled credit and recognition upwards and towards those who fit the established profile of a pioneer. A medical textbook page from the 1950s with the formula shown but no name credited. His work continued to save lives, but his identity was stripped away layer by layer until only the discovery remained anonymous and uncredited. This, of course, points to the much larger systemic bias in how we write and remember history. History is not a perfect objective record of the past. It is a story. And for centuries, that story has been told primarily by and about a very specific type of person. The contributions of women, people of color, and the LGBTQ community have been systematically minimized, co-opted, or erased entirely. We see it with Rosalind Franklin, whose crucial X-ray photograph was essential to discovering the structure of DNA, while Watson and Crick received the Nobel Prize and the lion's share of the credit. We see it in countless fields where groundbreaking work by marginalized individuals was ignored until it was rediscovered by someone from the dominant group. Dr. Clarke is a textbook example of this historical injustice. His identity as a black gay man made him an inconvenient protagonist in the grand, sanitized story of medical progress. It was simply easier for the historical record to forget him. But legacies, even those buried deep, can be rediscovered. In recent years, a new generation of historians, medical professionals, and activists have been working tirelessly to correct the record. They are the historical detectives, digging through archives, connecting the dots, and piecing together the stories of forgotten figures like Dr. Clarke. They are challenging the old narratives and demanding a more inclusive and accurate understanding of our past. This video, this conversation, is part of that crucial work of rediscovery. It is an act of reclamation. By learning his name, by understanding his struggle, and by celebrating his genius, we are pushing back against the forces that try to erase him. We are ensuring that his story and the profound impact of his work is not lost to the quiet biases of history. By remembering Dr. Cecil Belfield Clarke, we don't just give one man his long overdue recognition. We challenge the very way history is written. We reclaim the stories of those who were silenced, ensuring that genius in all its forms is never forgotten again.